In part 1, I talked about how a single character in almost any fighting game has such a large number of possible moves that using them all off the bat is almost impossible, or at least inadvisable. Knowing this, we started with a small number of very generally useful strong moves. But how do you expand and add more moves to your repertoire? As you use a small number of core moves against different opponents, you'll start to notice that there are different situations where nothing in your current strategy deals with your opponent's tactics. When you've internalized and are comfortable with the moves in your current plan, look to add as little as a single new move or tactic to your arsenal that deals with the most common or toughest opposing tactic you've faced. Let's take a quick look back at the Chun-Li plan from part 1, which was use stand heavy punch to control the ground, use back heavy kick as my anti-air, throw when my opponent's scared or blocking, I would walk backward and forward in order to precisely adjust spacing, I used dashing to move quickly, but it was more risky, and then finally crouch medium punch to deal with fireballs. I limited myself to these moves and was able to progress to Super Bronze rank, which is not the most amazing thing in the world, but it's definitely a start. With the original plan, I was obviously going to hit a brick wall sooner or later. When you hit that wall, or when you start feeling very comfortable with your existing repertoire of moves, it's time to add to the plan. This part can be pretty easy. By the time you hit the ceiling of how far your current strategy can get you, you've probably run into a bunch of problems where none of your options offered a good solution. To address some of the biggest issues I was running into, I decided to add 4 new moves to my plan. One issue that was popping up was that it was rough when my opponent was going crazy pressing buttons a bit beyond point blank range. Crouch heavy kick can blow people up in that kind of situation. If blocked, the opponent can hit me for free, so I can't just be throwing it out there constantly. But used here and there, it should make my opponent think twice about pressing too many buttons. Another problem I noticed was that I lacked a good button to press when I was trying to press my advantage after knocking down an opponent, anti-airing an opponent, etc. Back heavy punch is a great button for that. If they block, I recover and can act a split second before my opponent, so it's still my turn. If they're mashing buttons right as I hit them, it lets me get another hit for free, which is the first, albeit super simple, combo in our plan. This should also scare my opponent into blocking in these situations, so I should hopefully find more opportunities to land some throws. Walking or dashing from stand heavy punch range to throw range exposes you to a lot of risk. Crouch light punch can let you bridge that gap, as well as being a strong general offensive and defensive tool. Once I'm in, I can pressure with crouch light punch as it's quick and Chun is at a slight advantage regardless of whether the opponent gets hit or blocks. Defensively, it's also really helpful. When there's a gap in my opponent's pressure, I can use crouch light punch to reverse the momentum. Finally, I was finding myself in situations where back heavy kick either didn't reach or was too slow to anti-air my opponent. Stand light kick is faster and reaches further than back heavy kick, so it should help give me better control of the skies. There'll still be times where back heavy kick is the better choice, but being able to go to either option means I can anti-air my opponent effectively in more situations. And that's it. Again, just the same as how I formulated the original plan. When I want to add in new things, I want to make sure it's few enough pieces of information to fit into human working memory. Let's do one quick overview of what's being added. First, if I'm near my opponent, especially in a situation where I'm at an advantage, like if they get up from a knockdown or right after I anti-air them, I'll do back heavy punch. If they're mashing and a counter hits them, I'll follow up with a sweep. Second, if my opponent's going too crazy pressing buttons at kind of mid-range, I'll sweep. Even if this trades with their attack, it should be enough at least to get me out of some difficult situations. Third, when pressuring my opponent, I'll mix in crouch light punch with my throws and other options to mix up my offense. If I'm being pressured, I'll try to find a gap and press crouch light punch to interrupt. And last, if my opponent jumps at me and back heavy kick would be too slow or wouldn't reach forward far enough, I'll use stand light kick as my anti-air. And that's it for my first big addition to the plan. The focus is on keeping the number of new things manageable and addressing the biggest flaws in the existing plan. Again, I'll use the old plan plus the new stuff and see how far I can get before I hit another wall. The idea is you follow this kind of pattern. You start with a core plan using a small number of moves. Then you internalize and apply the existing plan against real people. You'll eventually hit a ceiling, but when this happens, you add a few new moves that seem most useful to address the biggest shortcomings in your existing plan. Again, test it out against opponents, and when you hit another ceiling, look for the next handful of moves to add. In part 3, we'll take a step back and address some of the biggest elephants in the room. Like, without a video like this to tell you what to do, how are you supposed to even figure out what a beginning plan should be in the first place? That's it for part 2. If you want to find out more or support me, here's how. Thank you for watching.